Okay, this was my biggest accomplishment of the day.
First challenge has been complete. We did it. That was actually pretty fast.
That's awesome.
Well, welcome everybody. Albert and I are very, very excited to introduce Legacy Project number 17. And this is a special one. A little background, I met Carey at an event back in Dallas. And we really didn't talk a whole lot. But I got to see her at another event, and then got to see her at another event, and then got to really actually I saw her in Vegas, and we were in the breakfast line, and I was like, all right, will you meet with me, because we keep meeting each other on breakfast time and at these events, and let's just talk. And so that's when I really got to just have one-on-one with her and really find out more about her story, to be real, and didn't realize how infused our journeys were. So that being said, I'll let Albert say a few words and I'll introduce Carey, but just wanted to give a little reflection that this is a special one because it has to do with Carey's story, suicide, the grief, the success, all the things that she's gone through with her and her daughter, but I'll let her share a little bit more. But Albert, go ahead and say a few words before we get started.
Yeah, so Carey, when me and my dad came together, he told me a lot about you already and how you guys just kept running into each other. And it just felt very needed right now, because most of the stuff that we talk about has been about me and him and the dynamic of the family. But we haven't talked about something as critical as losing a family member, and not only just one, but multiple. And so obviously that's going to be detrimental in just the whole layout and structure of what family and legacy means. And so here at the Legacy Project, we really want to build that family dynamic. So this was just a fresh new topic that felt a little bit edgy and at the same time much needed to help bring a little bit more nurturing and just learn more about what it really means to lose someone, not only just in relationships in yourself, but in just the whole family dynamic. So thank you for stopping by today. It really means a lot to us.
Wow, I'm honored, you guys. This is going to be a great discussion.
So let me tell you about Carey a little bit. So Carey Conley is a mental health advocate, speaker, author, podcast host, and co-founder of Vision is Victory Academy, a community to support young adults and their families. She has been teaching for over 30 years the importance of having a crystal clear vision for their life to offer them clarity, confidence, and hope for the future. She's on a mission to create a movement of positive mental health to young adults after losing her husband and 25-year-old son, really important number, to suicide over the past 10 years. It is in the wake of these tragedies that Carey shifted from being a successful business coach to talking and teaching about vision and hopes to change the trajectory of depression and suicide. Carey's story and vision, writing mythology, compels people to want to live with intention and purpose, not only for themselves, but for the ones they love. She leaves people not only inspired, but empowered with the knowledge of how to carry, no pun intended, out their life vision. Anyways, without further ado, Carey Conley.
Oh, thanks for that great introduction, Albert. I'm honored anytime that I get to speak and share my story, obviously, because I'm wanting to, like you guys, make a big difference in people's lives and change the trajectory of some things that are happening in our world, especially with our young adults right now. So thank you guys. I appreciate being here.
So real quick, I got to tell you, I literally got the chills right now. Yeah, I hadn't read the Bible. I got the chills because I didn't realize that your son was 25 years old. I didn't realize that. I missed that in the book, but I didn't realize that he was that young, but also that old as a young man. And so I guess my first reflection to you, Carey, is now that time has passed, right? It's been a few years now. Is give us a little bit of background to the story. Now that many years have gone by, and you've got to really digest what happened to you and your family.
Yeah, I can't believe it's coming up on 10 years. It'll be 10 years this July since losing my husband, and it'll be 7 years in August since losing my son. And anybody who goes through any kind of loss will tell you that there's seasons definitely journeys for many, many years for me. It was dealing with the shock and working through all of that, and the realization that this is actually happening to me.
Mm.
And just about the time that my daughter and my son and I had settled into understanding, how to have our lives without my husband, who I was with since high school, by the way. We lost my son, and that just took my daughter and I into a whole other realm. I actually, after that happened, I kind of took a year off. I got to a place where I just needed to go underground for a little while. And my daughter at that point had just gotten engaged to her now husband, and they've settled in Oklahoma. So I went to Oklahoma for quite a while. Went back to Arizona periodically to work with my clients, but I just really had to go inward. A lot of people go different ways with how they deal with grief. I had to go inward and really reflect on what was going on and how I was going to deal with this. So yeah, a lot of phases, Albert. I just can't even define it.
When you say you're going inward, a lot of people mean different things. Was it something that you found about yourself that you didn't know was in there?
Yeah, what I mean by inward is some people, Albert, need to they need to be in group therapy. They need to go on retreats. They need counseling. They need to be around their friends a lot. I just needed a lot of quiet time. I needed a lot of time to just really, really figure out, how I was going to deal with this, how I could get connected spiritually to God and really understand what was happening. A piece of this that I don't talk a lot about is that I had a lot of people start showing up in my life that I call super intuitive people. They're people who are connected to the other side, and just randomly start showing up in my life, bringing me messages from my husband and my son. And I have to tell you that all the counseling I attempt to do and the therapy I did, the most peace I got was from people who could actually connect me to them and bring me insights into the fact that they're still with me. They're still a big part of my mission. They're fueling this mission I'm behind right now. And so I started really diving deep into understanding a little bit more about that. So when I say go inward, Albert, I think it's different for everybody. You got to figure out what works for you and not listen to what everybody else tells you to do, right? You got to just figure out your own path.
What struck me the most, by the way, Carey wrote a book. It's called Keep Looking Up. And it
actually tells a story between her and her daughter, their perspectives on what happened. And what really got me was when you found out your husband took his life. Okay, there was a phase that you went through, and it seemed like you the way a book portrays is like you guys were okay. We're gonna get through this. But when your son took his life, the thing that I think that why it resonates with you on this is when your child does it, I felt my heart sank because of the fact that this is a young man that really hasn't even experienced life yet chose to take his life. I'm just curious that if you don't mind taking us through the mental fuckery, if you want to call it, that you had to go through with your husband and then your son, and that kind of bring us to where you are today.
Oh, there's so much to that. This would be a 3-hour podcast, but so many questions people ask me about suicide. Did you see it coming? What were the signs? All the typical things. And I have told people that, yes, I knew that both my husband and my son were struggling with most especially their career, where they were at in their careers. But not ever thinking that they would ever consider taking their life, especially my son after losing his dad, knowing how hard that was on us, right? But there's so much, like I said, afterwards, looking back, that I now understand. They just both, if you understand suicide, you said this to me the other day, Albert, and I'll touch on this, that people think it's a very selfish act. And I said to you, it's quite the opposite. Because when people get to the point where they've decided to take their life, it's because they really, truly feel like their family will be better off without them. right? Like they just had crossed over into a realm of, I'm never going to get better. I'm being a burden on my family. I'll never be understood, and so it becomes like a snap decision. This is the only way out. And, like you said, with my son, yes, looking back, 25-year-old young man who had everything going. I mean, he had an amazing career with Channel 12 in the short time he was there. He was very, very respected, very well loved, just an amazing young man, and had his whole life ahead of him, but he couldn't see that. Right.
Yeah, I hear you, and I appreciate you touching on that.
And if you don't mind, I'm just gonna give you my reflection of where that question was coming from. I'm gonna be vulnerable with everybody on here. Okay, so I have had a rough life.
Mm-hmm.
It's all generalized. And
I became a dad. I think that really shifted for me because now I'm responsible for other human beings. And I told you, like probably 3 times in my life, I've considered, like for 1 second, but there's something about me. Again, I'll talk about me, that I felt I had a personal responsibility that there's just no fucking way I could ever put that quote unquote burden on others, especially my kids being young, on that. And so why I asked that, because my feedback is why I felt it's selfish at times. There's different scenarios. Everybody's different scenarios. Okay. Is it one of the things men are struggling today with is, again, that was 10 years ago. So the same struggle still exists, is finding purpose in life, like finding why you exist. And I think that there are 900,000 other things that we could do, because once we take our life, there's no other more options to fix whatever's going on. So my perspective has been, I had a personal responsibility. Again, in 2019, you read my book, I was the lowest in my life. I had zero self-esteem. My kids weren't talking to me. I pretty much lost everything except my career. That was a perfect opportunity for me to do that. Yet the self-respect and the you would say, loathing that I had myself was so low, but it wasn't low enough for me to say, this is the only way out. So that was my only reflection back to where, as my responsibility as a dad, that I had to make sure that I needed to fix things for myself so that I could be that responsible, dutiful, respectable man that I talk about, so that my son doesn't have to now grieve with what I had to deal with and now do it his way. So anyway, that was the reason why I brought that subject up at one point.
I don't know what it is, Albert, why some people make the decision to go one way or the other. And I don't know that I will ever know that answer on this side of heaven, right? You were called up, my friend, and you made a choice instead of taking a path that would have been the easy way out to really make some drastic changes. And I've read your book. You've made some unbelievable, miraculous changes, regardless of how you were brought up and what you went through. And so what's happening for you right now, Albert, and for me, I believe, is that we're changing some generational bonds, right? For me now, it's all, people ask me, how are you still doing what you're doing? And I tell them it's because it's not about me. I know you talk a lot about this. This is where we're talking about legacy, right? It's not about me. This is about me, a generation, change the trajectory of where we're headed, which is a lot of depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, lack of direction and purpose. Because if I can't help the young adults, how are they going to be as parents?
Absolutely.
And that is really smack in my face right now, because as I'm a grandparent now. I've got 2 grandsons that I'm heavily invested in that I want them to grow up and be, healthy, amazing young men.
So, kind of pivoting on the last point, since you guys are from a different generation than me, and seeing that growing up is different than what you guys had to deal with, what are you noticing right now, and why, specifically men, and then I'm curious also females as well, like why do you think men aren't wanting to grow up? And is there something that we can do about it? What is the common patterns that you are noticing with the vision movement that you're working with right now?
Wow, we could, again, another, weekend, long retreat type thing. So many things, Albert. I think, unfortunately, that there have been a couple of generations of young men and women who have been raised without, how do I want to put this? I think they've been raised to not know how resourceful they are on their own. I think that have really raised up a couple of generations that there was too much parenting, too much hovering, too much, we're going to fix it and help you along the way. And instead of saying, hey, I believe in you and I think you can figure this out. And so I think, especially in young men, there's a lot of allowing you to really figure things out on your own and grow your own self-esteem, right? And I think it's dangerous, especially for young men, because they don't know their value. And they don't know, again, what they bring to the relationship. Because the other side of it, we talked a bit about this, is that I think we're dealing with a generation of young women who are becoming so independent, which is not bad, but it's making it very hard for a male to figure out what their role is in the relationship, right? So there's so many things, so much pressure on you guys to feel like, I have a 22-year-old producer in the studio where I do my podcast. I'm so excited you're coming on with me next week, Albert.
I can't wait.
He's 22 years old, and I asked him one day how he felt about starting his adult life. And he said, I feel a lot of pressure about money, about relationships, about my career. And I don't remember that much. I remember coming out of college and feeling like, okay, I got to figure this out, but not to the debilitating state that you guys have it. Right?
Yeah, well, it's funny that you mentioned that first part. Me and my dad were talking about that last night too. So it's funny you mentioned the pressure that's really going on. And I'm sure one of the factors is social media. You literally see everything all the time. And it's like, even if you don't consciously put yourself in the shoes, if you see it for a certain amount of time, it's gonna feel like you're a part of that reality, but you're not there. So there's some gap that we're always trying to break, right? So I think you touched on something really pivotal that's going on with my generation is, because I'm 25, about to be 26 this year. And it's like, it's crazy. Even like our interactions are TikTok based. It's funny. It's like, why don't we like actually interact the way that most people now? Meme culture is like coming in. So it's like, there's so many different blends that are breaking this new mold and how to interact, let alone date, let alone figure out how you want to move your life. It's pretty interesting, the social experiment that we're doing right now.
Yeah. And everything's under the camera, right? I mean, everything is not a part of my generation 3,000 years ago at all. And the other thing I didn't mention that many young adults tell me, especially this young man who's 22, he said, I feel like I'm already behind.
Yeah.
How in the world can you feel like you're already behind? You're 22 years old.
There's one point on that, though, that I think is kind of understandable. And I didn't realize this until I graduated college. And maybe it's some of the influencers that I was listening to as well. Again, it's all related, I think. Once you leave college, whether you're 22, 23, 24, 25, whatever that age is, you're competing against everyone else in the dating pool, in the job pool, and in life. So like you aren't, but you are at the same time. So there's this like kind of yin and yang with that, which I think is what he's speaking to as well with the behind the eight ball, because you are dealing with people. If you go to the entry job, I guess you can kind of get away with it. But if you're wanting to start your own business, I mean, you technically are behind the eight ball in that regard.
Yeah. I know, it's crazy. I mean, I even look at you, Albert, look at your background. You're already, in real estate and, running your own business. I'm thinking, wow, we're 25 years old. Can you just imagine where you're going to be when you're like 30, 40? You guys are just so much further ahead than we ever were, which is a good thing and a bad thing. Again, I really applaud it. I applaud you for doing that. But I also know that I see so many young adults that they might look at somebody like you, Albert, and go, oh my God, he's already doing real estate all by himself. What am I doing? Right. We've got to really help people right now have a vision for their own life and be okay with what's right for them.
This is a great segue. And this is where I think
when I connect a lot is we'll get into the vision of what you teach. This is what I had to learn. What I think what Albert and I have really been able to connect with is this understanding of generations. I just learned this, Carey, like literally at 47 years old. Like I even parented him all wrong. Like it was my fault. I was part of the problem because we did call him. He was in a bubble, and we wanted to keep him safe from certain things. But I realized like that was irresponsible for me as a father to do. But yet we're doing it now. And here's my message that I really, really, really had to resonate for me is I believe when we've been told a lie. We've been told a lie our whole life. Our whole life has been, what are you going to do in life? How are you going to contribute to society, right? That's been from us being little boys. It's like, you want to be a fireman, a policeman, a doctor, whatever, right? A baseball player. And then when that doesn't happen, guess what? We settle. Men get depressed. They all these things. And the reason why is we've been taught what to do. We haven't been taught who to become.
Right.
That's what the soapbox I'm on now is like, if more men and women, but I'm talking about men specifically, took time at what kind of man do I want to be in this world, right? Like we talked about this before. What kind of character? What do I want to look like? How do I want to feel? That baseline, is critical for young men, and that's what I'm helping like my son understand is like, look, build your life the way you want it to be, and who you want to become, and as long as when you have that core understanding of who you are, now it doesn't matter what people say, it doesn't matter what people do, it doesn't matter where you're going, because now you have this base you can take with you wherever you go. But what I think what's happened is too many men are selling themselves to the fucking devil, or to the devil, which is either a woman or a career or something that doesn't satisfy them fully, instead of looking within like you did, is how do I become a better man? How do I become a better individual? And I think if we start there, that is the groundwork that we can play with, and now we can be creative in what we want to do in life.
Yeah, I 3000% agree, because as I said earlier, the biggest struggle that both my husband and my son were having was what their career paths and the choices they had made in the career path. I know my husband, I think looking back, he went into sales and he was very, very successful at it. Very respectful, very respected in his industry and in his company. But I think in his heart, I think he would have been a really great teacher. It just wasn't something that was encouraged, right, when he was growing up. And my son, like I said, even though his career was very successful, I think he would have wanted to do something completely different. But it wasn't following their own hearts. It was following what they were told they should do. Mm-hmm. And I think that is a big problem in most, not just in men, mostly men, but I think women feel it too. I know that I definitely went down a path that I was told to do, right? I wanted to be a singer and an actress growing up. My parents said, yeah, that's really cute. You're going to college and you're going to get a business degree.
You're still young. You can go back on American Idol.
Yeah, I think it's a little, well, maybe it's the oldest one ever going on American Idol. That could be funny, actually. But, it's just, I think, Albert, what you're saying is we've got to teach people to understand who they really are so that they can follow their true path. Yes. Right?
Yes.
So, a question, go ahead.
Yeah, so kind of circling it back around to like the whole idea of like grief, it feels like that's kind of the undertone of this too.
Yeah.
Is like, even with the decision making of like career paths and like who you have to become and losing that old person of yourself, what did you have to lose in order to become the woman that you are today during this process?
Oh, so much. I had to really give up old patterns and old habits of how I built businesses the way I built them, because I built them with a lot of strategy and a lot of control. And it's taken me a good 5 years or more now, you guys, to kind of let that all go, so that I could really follow the path that God really wants me to follow right now and just trust it. So it was really a lot of surrendering. I mean, truly a lot of surrendering. And somebody at my age, I just turned 62. That's not easy to do when you had a habit over and over, right, for so long. I had to realize that I had to stop looking at what everybody else was doing, how they were doing it. Again, the comparison thing. I'm not following a traditional path for a speaker and a coach right now because I'm building a movement for young adults, and that's a whole different thing. So, and I had to stop worrying so much about money, right? And identity. It was just like I said, surrender is my big word. I have a plaque literally in my bathroom with the big word surrender on it because I do it every day now. It's hard. But just, just really learning to breathe more. Yeah.
And
Right.
and lastly, I'll let you pivot, but I'm curious, when you were going through this transformation, obviously you and your daughter, Laurel, went through two different paths, right?
Yes.
It can be really easy for even myself to hold myself to an old self,
Yeah.
along with other friends, family members. When you guys were going through this together, I heard you in the book say that you knew that you had to hold on to each other and use each other in a sense to support one another.
Yeah.
How was your relationship impacted from that loss? And did you guys ever struggle with holding on to old versions and identities of yourself in that process? And what did it look
Yes.
like?
So much to unpack there too. So as you recall, when my husband passed, my son had just graduated from college and was starting his career. Laurel was going back into her junior year of college. And so we all had three different dynamics happening. And then when my son passed, Laurel had been out of college for a while, had just gotten engaged and was starting her life. And we were living in two different cities. And so we really, especially for the first year or two, really held on to each other very tight. We were a very close family. So, and we started speaking together quite a bit, co-wrote the book that you guys have mentioned, Keep Looking Up. And so we were really, really working together regularly on a daily basis. So all of our conversations were working through how she was dealing with things, how I was dealing with things, which were very different, by the way. And we had to learn to give each other a lot of space and a lot of respect on how we were dealing with it. Then when she started her family, and I had some choices to make as to where I was going to live. And like I told you guys, I moved to Oklahoma. Maybe I didn't say that here on the podcast, but I moved to Oklahoma to be near them for a couple of years, thinking that was the right move for me to be near them and the family. And it turned out it wasn't the best dynamic. I love where I live in Arizona. I've got a tribe of people here that I really vibe with. And my daughter really loves the vibe there. And even though I was close to them, I wasn't happy. And it was putting a lot of pressure on her. So we had to really talk through a lot of that. It was kind of touchy for a little while, I have to tell you. But we learned a lot, and we still are very close. We check in on each other daily, and we're great friends, and I go back there often. But it was a lot of work, Albert, and this is a really good question. We had to really work through it, and we continue to work through it, because the one thing we promised each other when we lost both my husband and my son was that we would have to communicate with each other a lot, especially if we weren't doing well. Right? So yeah, it's a work in progress, especially when you have adult children. You got to learn how to give them their space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've had to learn,
and I learned it through a men's group, is what men want is we like to solve problems. And so men hate getting advice. We fucking hate it. But for some reason, we don't know how to tell people that. And so what I've had to learn with my kids is to ask questions. And my son's got really good at it. He asks very curious questions. He was never like that, by the way. This is like the evolution of the man he's become, because he's got to learn about himself. But with that is just learning how to be supportive of them and not so adversary of them.
Right.
And that was a huge shift for me. And I learned that through suffering, like, because we were not in a good place a few years ago. And I had to learn either let them walk all over me or be this old version of myself, or I had to come at them differently, like the young adults they are. And like, how would I like to be talked to? What kind of respect? And so the questions I'll ask them is like, hey, how do you need support today? Do you want me to just listen?
Right.
my advice, or
ask questions, and sometimes just listen for a while. So I really love what you said about you and your daughter and that relationship, because at the end of the day, there are people like us, and we're little kids like them. But it's a matter of how do we communicate effectively so that we both get our wants and needs.
Right. And I love that you said that, Albert, because it is that question. Sometimes I will say the same thing to my daughter. Do you want me to give you advice, or are you just venting to me right now and you need me to just listen? Especially when I became a grandmother, I'm going to write a whole other book on what it really means to be a grandparent, because there are things people do not tell you about that. And how I really just have to step back and just trust that they're parenting their kids the way they should. And I have to tell you, Albert Jr., I really admire you for the respect that you give your dad for the way he was and the transformation he's made, and giving him, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but a lot of grace and mercy to come back to the relationship and rebuild it. Right? That is a very mature thing to do.
Part of the story that he does touch on, I think it's in the story, I'm not sure. We've told so many stories, honestly, is we both had to come to the table because it was mutual in terms of, I'll say, disrespect.
Sure.
Just because there was a lack of respect.
Sure.
And so we literally had to, it's probably been 3 years now, honestly. I think he came down one time to Orange County, and we were at a small little restaurant in Costa Mesa, Orange County area, and we literally had to it was spur of the moment. It wasn't planned, just talk face to face, and we both started crying because we were just feeling the angstiness. We felt the tension in the air, and it was just so easy, but so hard to do because we had all this pent up like emotion that we didn't know how to put on the table. And
Sure.
that it was a mutual respect thing that we had to just let go of and finally just put it on the table, because if not, it was just going to continue down the line. So that's why there was a mutual respect, is because we both decided, hey, this is enough's enough. Like, let's actually get down to it. And that was because we both decided to do our own inward stuff to figure out what's really going on. So that was the other side of the story that you don't see.
Yeah. Yeah, I know there's always two sides, but it would be so much easier as the I don't want to use the word child, but it would have been easier for you to be bitter to your parent, right, and not apologetic, or I'm sorry, as forgiving as a parent to a child, right?
And that's something I noticed too. Oh, sorry, go ahead, finish. I didn't cut you off.
I just wanted you to know that I think the work that the two of you have done has been really amazing, and that what you're doing here, I hope a lot of people are listening, because it is just a lot of surrendering and laying it all down and just accepting your responsibility in it. And I know you talk a lot about this in the book, Albert, about how you accept responsibility, right? Because this is where families are broken, is that they just get bitter and they become the victim, and they want to blame everybody else for everything. Right?
Yeah, and that last part is what I wanted to expand on too, is I don't understand. And this is the difference between me and my dad, is I don't understand, and I'm still questioning how, because he's not close to his dad and my mom's not close to his dad or to her dad as well, is I think it's really easy a lot of times for the kids to blame their parents. Granted, I had really good parents. I'm pretty blessed. There was a lot of fucked up stuff that happened, but I think I've noticed a lot of times it's really easy to blame them. And then there's a story that gets wrapped around. And so again, I don't know, I don't have the emotional ties as other people do, but that's what I've never understood. And I'm working to at least listen.
Yeah.
And not necessarily try to understand, because I'm not sure if I ever will, but there's a story that gets wrapped around because there's so much stuff that isn't talked about, I think, a lot of times. And so it's easier for the child to just scapegoat the parent.
Yeah.
Times.
For sure. And it's hard to talk, y'all. I mean, I am somebody, like I said, that I don't gravitate towards counseling and therapy a lot. It's hard for me to really talk transparently about my feelings, especially with family. But it has to be done if you want it to heal and grow. And again, if you want to change the family, breakthroughs we need to make, right? It's so funny. I'll tell this funny story. So one day we were in the kitchen in Oklahoma, and it was me and my daughter, and in between us was my grandson, who at that point was about 2.5, maybe. And we were talking about some serious stuff, and I started crying. And my grandson, he was coloring or something. He all of a sudden just slowly put his pencil down, and he looked up, and he looked at me, and then he slowly looked at his mother, because he could not figure out, like, he calls me Cece. Why is Cece crying, right? And my daughter looked at me and said, "Hey, Price, it's okay to cry. It's okay to cry. Cece's just sad right now," right? And I just thought, okay, that is such a cool thing, because we need to tell them that your emotions are okay, especially if you see them in an older person, because they don't expect that, right? Yeah, we just have to be so much more transparent with each other, you guys.
No, I love that. Great question.
I want to expand on take a few minutes. We have about 15 minutes left just for timing, but I want to take the last 10 minutes to really talk about your academy and stuff. But one more question I have is, like, one of the things I really love about you, Carey, is not just your transparency, but just your willingness to put yourself out there. And this is where you talked about family, and this is where I think that where you and I are similar, is when we make a decision to change or to surrender, there's going to be some pain, a lot of pain, but there's also going to be some people that aren't going to understand, and they're going to be repelled by this newer version of us.
Yeah.
Did you experience that
as you were shifting, into this person you are today, to get over the grief and the grace? And how did you deal with that?
There's a chapter in our book called "There's Grace and Mercy." There's two of them. I'll hit on: Grace and Mercy, and the super safe people. Right. So traditionally, I am an A-type personality that took care of everything and organized everything.
Yeah.
Like, we were the house we had parties at our house all the time. I organized everything. I got it going on. I figured out, I knew where everybody was, and I was organizing it. Right. And after losing my husband and then my son, I was no longer that person. And I'm still not to this day. And I think it was hard for a lot of people to understand that, especially my family, because I just couldn't be that person anymore. Right. And so I learned that there were people who were giving me the grace and mercy that I was trying to give myself, because it was hard for me to let that part of myself go and feel like I didn't need to do that anymore. And I really appreciated the people who respected me and gave me that space to do that. And so when we talked about the super safe people, which is the second thing, is Laurel and I learned that there were people that were going to, and this is a super important point I want to make, you guys, if you're trying to help people move through adversity, there are people who want to help you the way they would want to be helped if they were going through something, right? Like, there are people who would love to have had the house full of people and do the whole circle up and cry in a corner kumbaya thing, right? Or, people who need to have all the food brought in, and we weren't those people. So the people that we learned, especially the second time around, were the people that we knew were going to treat Laurel and I the way we wanted to be treated day by day in the moment, not what they needed. Right. And so I've changed a lot over the years, Albert. And I think the biggest thing is I had to learn to give myself a lot of grace and compassion, and learn that it's okay for me to make this change, and that not everybody will come along, and that's okay.
Yeah. I call it love ain't lies. Right?
Tell the truth. Some people can take offense to it, and not knowing that that's love. Like, me telling you the truth is love.
Yeah.
Me trying to be fake and make you feel good, I'm lying to you. That's not helping you. That's hindering you. And so I just love what you said, because I asked the question because I know in my journey, as I've elevated, I'll say it that way, I didn't realize, honestly, didn't realize that how many people that I would repel, that I thought that would want to be a part of the journey, and then people I attracted that want to be a part of the journey. So that and my personality is, I love people. Like, I love people, but my wounding is is abandonment. So when people leave my life, I still have a hard time with it because I want everybody to love me, right? But
Yeah.
I have to realize that I'm not, I'm not Captain Save-A-Ho. I can't save you anymore. Like that's not my role anymore. But I can tell you truths to help you see a different perspective of things, and then you get to make that decision whether you want to accept the truth or you want to keep living in that self truth, which is a false reality of things. So, and I think that's just an important thing is to show people the mirror in their life so they can make the decision whether they want to change or not. And so, no, I appreciate everything you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, as I said at the very beginning of this thing, it's a journey, right? I look back, Facebook memories is just a bittersweet thing, right?
Yeah.
It's a love-hate relationship with Facebook memories. And, what now is popping up are all the pictures from my daughter graduating from high school. And, my husband and my son, of course, are in the pictures. And, I look back and I think, wow, this just seems like a lifetime ago. So, I'm just taking it step by step, day by day, just like everybody else is. And just hope that I am like you guys, making a difference in other people's lives and, making a choice to be here.
I appreciate
We can talk for hours. Maybe we'll do another, podcast. But I want to focus a little bit. Tell us a little about your academy. You have to about vision. Spend a few minutes that so you can tell our audience where to find you, and then we'll wrap it up by giving links and so forth. But yeah, tell us about your academy and what it's doing and how it's helped people so far.
I appreciate you guys asking. So what I'm known as, even before any of this happened in my life, is that I'm a vision expert. I help people get what I call their someday dream out of their head onto paper so they can actually create it. I've been doing it for years. And so I have a workbook. My first book is actually Vision is Victory. It's a workbook to help people write their vision. And for many, many years, I was doing that for entrepreneurs. But after losing my husband and my son, I made a choice to now want to work with young adults. And when I say young adults, I'm talking early 20s to early 30s, give and take, because I feel like they are a generation right now that are not really focused on and they need a lot of help. Mm-hmm. And so I am building a community that I literally have talked about doing this. My son and I actually talked about doing it together. This is how long I've been talking about it. But it literally launched unofficially in a soft launch this month. Officially, it will launch on June 1st. It's called Vision is Victory Academy, VIVA for short.
VIVA. I love it.
Yeah. So it's where I'm going to be inviting people in to be members so that they can get master classes on different life skills that they're working on, finances, relationships, moving through trauma, vision, my work, whatever. I will actually go into the membership once a month and do some live coaching and some Q&A. I'm going to be doing some events throughout the year, live events where I can pull them all together so they can literally meet each other and build that community. So I'm very, very excited about it because I just feel like it's my calling. And every time I talk about it, people tell me, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. So it's kind of a movement.
So,
yeah, I'm excited for it. And I'm excited to be on your podcast next week too and learn a bit more about what's going on.
Yes.
And just understand like how you coach as well too and how you dive through that as well. So I want to thank you for stopping by today. It means the world to me because again, me and my dad have been going through this journey now. We started at the beginning of the year and it's just blowing up. It's getting a lot more popular and surprisingly, I don't know if you mentioned this to you yesterday or not, but we've had a strong female audience just that's really curious about what me and my dad are doing.
I'm sure.
So it's been really cool to explore that route and having side conversations offline. And just learning like how me and my dad have reconnected. So I want to thank you for coming because part of your journey was about family and having to reconnect that along with your other business of creating a vision and how to move forward once obstacles get in the way. Yeah. So what I learned today is really just not only just about resiliency, but how to just like give yourself enough grace to put you in the right direction and also learn what is good for you is good for everyone else and giving yourself that space that is necessary.
So true. You're so wise, young Albert.
Yeah. And I want to say,
what I got out of this, I'm so glad we did this because I got to see you in a different light than I even did yesterday. And I got to see you not just perform, but just be. And just the genuine person that you are. And I got to understand a little bit more clarity at at who you really are and why you're doing what you're doing. And like I said, our visions are very parallel. It's just a different approach. And I could already see that you made an impact in Albert, which means the world to me because again, I think again, not knowing until today that your son was 25 years old, that really hit home to me. Like I remember when I was 25, like I was already a dad. I was engaged to get married to his mom.
Yeah.
Like I was already in it, and I can't imagine, what your son was going through or feeling at the time of just the complete loss that he must have been feeling, and even your husband. So I have a lot more compassion for you. So I appreciate you coming on here, and I want you to. I'm going to post this. We're going to collaborate on this, and in the comments, I want you to put, how they can access you, your links, whatever. Feel free, and then I'll post it on Facebook too. And do you have any other things you want to talk about or questions for us before we leave? If there's something you want to ask us, feel free. But I just want to thank you first before we leave that you came on the show.
No, I'm honored that you asked me, you guys, and I feel inspired by what you are doing for young men growing up in this world. So, and father-son relationships, I think a lot of healing needs to be done. So I appreciate the work you're doing so much.
Thank you, Carey. We appreciate you.
Everybody, we're signing off. And what's that?
I look forward to having you on the podcast, Albert.
Yes, I'll see you next week.
Have a good night, and thanks again.
Thank you all. Thank you so much.